Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of. I haven't quite figured out what I'm doing here. So simply welcome to another episode. My initial intention was to record on a daily basis, but on the weekends, things kind of come undone. So you'll please excuse me for that. So today, I'm going to be focusing on one thing, and this is routine. Routine. The reason I focus on this today is because back in 2021, I had just quit alcohol, I had just joined AA, and for those first few months, the only real routine I had was going to work and going to AA. As much as these things did help, you know, I'm going to start by saying, asking the question, what is the value of routine? What value does routine serve? Now, when I was younger, I was in university, even high school at the time, I always considered routine to be a prison. Okay? I am stuck in this place. I have to wake up at a certain time. Classes start and end at certain times. I have to eat lunch at a certain time. That felt like a prison. And as soon as I left the confines of my parents' home, my initial idea was to do away with all routine. So when I joined university and I was finally living alone, rather with my brother, I didn't have a set lunchtime. I didn't have a set dinner time. I never had a set bedtime. And because in my university, classes were usually starting at after 1 p.m., I didn't even have a set wake up time. Things happened the way the universe, I might have said, decided. And maybe at the time that was important for me. I needed a time away from a structure set for me by an external force in order to learn how to create my own structure, born out of my own desires to evolve to become a better man. But unlike most, it took me a really long time to figure some of this stuff out. So I left my parents' home initially when I was 18. This is the first time when I stopped living with my parents. I was 18. And we can say between 18 and 25, 26, I basically didn't know how to live. And I should add that I was a husband by 22. So that's, 3 to 4 years of living with someone else and still not knowing how to structure my own individual life. The structure I had during this time was basically now I'm going to move beyond university. Once I finished university, or rather when I left university, the structure I had was basically, work, home, and parties. This was it. This was it. And the first job I had coming out of school, I was a bartender. I was a bartender. So this kind of job doesn't really allow for a normal, scheduled, routine life. My working hours for my first job was basically 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., 6 days a week. So I was what my wife my wife will say, Oscar, you live like a cockroach. Even on my one day off a week, I will sleep throughout the day and wake up at night to go for a walk. This is one of the habits that even to this day it's very hard for me to let go of. Like I now work during the afternoons, but when I know I don't have work on the following day, I really, really want to go and walk at night. I mean, I don't do anything. I don't drink. I don't party. I do none of these things. But I just enjoy walking at night. And I realize this isn't good for me, for my circadian rhythm, and all of these things. But it is a habit I developed during this time. Once I quit drinking at the age of 26, I was no longer a bartender. So, at 26, no drinking, father, husband, teacher. That was basically it. At the time I was making podcasts with a friend, podcasting. So, it's not, I've never thought about this until now. Having a podcast was part of my weekly routine at the time, at 26. And these things, losing drinking, kind of destroyed my routine. Because when I was drinking, I would look forward to the weekends. And Friday and Saturdays were times when I could meet my friends, interact with them, get drunk with them, de-stress, right? But once I stopped drinking at 26, the replacement for the drinking buddies was supposed to be AA. But at the time, I didn't quite get how AA works. As far as I was concerned, I'm going to meetings where people talk about their feelings and whine about their lives. And I thought, okay, this is probably how it works. People here seem not to drink, so I guess I'll just come and talk about my life. But it wasn't really sticky. It didn't quite feel like a routine, especially because at the time I was working on some Saturdays, so I could only attend at best 2 meetings a month. Because, well, where I live, the only English speaking meeting, AA meeting, happens once a week, at least back then. So it was only every Saturday. With fatherhood and being a husband, I would take my kid to school in the morning, to daycare at the time. My wife would go to work. I only saw my family for a couple of hours a day, right? Teacher was my job. And I wouldn't even say I was really a teacher. I was basically what they call an English facilitator. I played with kids in English, right? I helped them improve their English. I wouldn't say I was teaching them English. The podcasting, now this is where I developed a routine, developed sanity, developed patience. I didn't realize how much this helped me back then, because I was processing a lot of my thoughts, just like I'm doing here. I had a podcast with a friend, and every week he was living in Tokyo, I was living in Osaka. So every week we'll just go to, do a Discord call and record a podcast. In that, I was always looking forward to that Friday, because we did it every Friday. I was always looking forward to those Fridays. That gave me routine, and routine gave me an inkling of sanity. So what is the value of routine? I think the human mind, and this is my understanding, the human mind needs direction. It needs to know we are working towards something. It needs to know that there's a path to follow towards something. And routine suggests to the mind that there is a path that you are on. Now, I will not tell you what my routine is nowadays, because it doesn't matter. I think Once people start talking about like I wake up at 3:45 a.m., I take a cold shower every morning, I think we start losing track of what the point is. Now I don't do this, but if I told you that I wake up at 3:45 and I meditate for an hour, then I go to the gym. Now what I've noticed is people start thinking, okay, in order for me to level up, I need to do that. But that's besides the point. And I say that's besides the point because when I first started consuming self-improvement content, I didn't listen to the idea of like man needs routine. What I heard is you need to wake up at 3:45 a.m. You need to go to the gym at 5 a.m. That's what I heard. But that was besides the point. The point is routine. You need a routine that works for you. You need a routine to show your mind where your life is headed. And the routine, in essence, is a path. Incremental to your goal. The example is this. If you're a person who really cares about aesthetics, physically speaking, the routine is you need to go to the gym at least 3 times a week. The routine is you have to do, 10 reps, 3 sets of bicep curls. The routine is you're having the same meal every day. A path to your goal. That's what a routine is. Your brain understands that this boring, incremental, step-by-step thing I am doing is leading somewhere. That is the value of routine. We are going somewhere. And even though in this very moment, this feels very manual, it feels very analog, it feels very inauthentic, the idea is there is a northern star that the routine is leading us towards. And think about the routine is basically a conveyor belt. It's a conveyor belt. You stand on and you move. And it's very boring and nothing exciting happens, and you watch people who are running on the aisles and they are having fun. They are having so much fun. They are going partying, they are traveling, they are doing all these things, and you're just stuck on the conveyor belt. But you're not really stuck, because all that fun they are having fun in one place. You're moving. The movement might feel boring, but you know where it leads you to, at the very least. You know where you hope it leads to. This is the value in routine. Now, the problem with routine is that routine gets very monotonous. Well, I guess that's, in essence, routine is monotony. And monotony leads to boredom. And boredom leads to doubt. But here I think boredom is something that a human should value. Because out of boredom do we extract wisdom that is laying dormant within us. It's very hard for the modern man in 2026 to appreciate the value of boredom. Like I have 3 kids, and I see how my oldest is 6. I see how she cannot stand a moment of boredom. And the first thing she says, there is nothing to do. I'm so bored, there is nothing to do. And when we were kids and there was nothing to do, we will run out to the park, play with mud, even throw rocks at each other. We always figured out what to do in order. No, I wouldn't say to avoid boredom. I will say because of boredom, we created something fun. But people, when I look at my kids, it's like when there's boredom, they seem to be stuck. But boredom forces man to extract dormant wisdom. And boredom comes from the monotony of routine. What time do you wake up? What do you do after you wake up? What do you do before or after your meals? What time do you go to bed? What do you do before you go to bed? All of these things matter, especially if you have your Northern Star, you have your mission. Do you have your mission? And this is something that my sponsor and I discuss all the time. The value of a mission. Now, if we are going to talk about how to avoid depression, anxiety, and all of these things from a layman's point of view, we cannot ignore discussing a mission. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for watching the entire video, and I will be posting another video tomorrow. Thank you.